Chevawn, Ronan, first time on the Phocuswright Center stage.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and we're going to talk business travel. So, let me start with you, Ronan. You're sitting furthest away. You know, during every crisis, and I used to work in business travel, you know, we hear it's going to change fundamentally. You know, nothing's ever going to be the same again. It's going to be reinvented. Now that we're kind of moving on with, from the pandemic, what's your view? Has business travel changed forever?
Well, I think that's a very good question. First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for inviting us this morning. It feels very good to be here back after 2 years of pandemic. That said, the question is, do you know any business who hasn't changed around the last 2 years? Seriously, all businesses have changed, including business travel. If you look at things from a high perspective, what's interesting is to look at the main impacts, I would say. And for sure, just over the last 60 minutes, most of those topics we already covered. So we talked about sustainability, we talked about culture. Something we haven't really covered so far is really the remote work, distributed workforce. So those are the three main impacts we've seen. So to answer your question, what has changed is the way we do business, the way we work, and the way we do business travel. One thing that is one of the very positive outcomes of the last 2 years is the value of business travel. I mean, more than ever, business travel is playing a key role for every business due to the fact that, just to share a few data, a few years ago, we did a survey with Harvard Business Review, and what we demonstrated is the power of in-person meetings. And so one statistic that I'm sure is going to be interesting to hear for everyone is that an in-person request will be 34 times more likely to be accepted by a prospect than a text-based communication. So I don't know if we have many sales in this room, but I guess that's a good takeaway for everyone, which means that now we have challenges for companies to, that are super critical for the recovery. On one hand, they have to handle the economic recovery. On the other hand, something you talked about during the introduction, which is talent, to attract talent, to retain talent, which makes the value of business travel even more important. So what we believe, sorry to conclude, and before I give you the mic, what we believe at Egencia and GBT is that there's a great opportunity ahead of us for business travel to be one of the key drivers for, let's say, a more sustainable recovery.
Chevawn?
I think I might add just 2 points to that, because I think you did a great job of summarizing everything. And also, if I think about what the previous panel was talking about, is that digitalization. So, you know, during the pandemic, I think there was a McKinsey study that came out and said we've sort of been sped up by about 7 years through that pandemic in terms of how we've adopted digitalization. So the voice of the consumer has kind of become a little bit louder. And if we think about business travel, previously it used to be the travel manager sort of on top of that hierarchy. And I would say that what's maybe kind of, maybe not flipped, but changed a little bit is that end traveler having a bit of a louder voice at the table. So that consumer really having expectations for an improved experience, a seamless experience, a consumer level or a consumer grade experience is what I might add to what Roman was saying. I definitely echo the importance of that distributed workforce. That's something that we've seen as well in our data, and also how the reasons for travel have changed potentially as you shifted teams, you're coming together, your length of stay. Yeah, so that's what I'd add to that very thorough opening statement.
Yeah, but it's interesting because you talk about sort of that consumer experience and consumer grade. I mean, Egencia pretty much has been talking about the same things right from the very beginning. How do you make that? Because that's always been something that we've talked about in business travel for ever, really, is bringing that leisure experience, the leisure user experience, that consumer-grade experience, however you phrase it, to business travel, right? And the functionality, the ease of use, all of those things play in there. The seamlessness, you talked about seamless. Has anything fundamentally changed? I mean, yes, TripActions has a great interface. Egencia does. The functionality is there. So what? Like, how do you kind of convey that message to travelers, especially sort of when business travel has always got that, the policy framework. You can only do this. You can only do that. Thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I think the biggest indicator of that will be your adoption, right? So you need to look at, are my travelers using the platform? Do I have full visibility? Is everyone booking on the platform? Something that TripActions prides itself on is the adoption to the platform. If you've got a great experience, if you've got a mobile device that works well, if you can book, change, cancel your flights, your hotels, your car, if you can do that all on the go, on your phone, without having to boot up your laptop to do all of that, and you're adopting the program, you've got a really good indication of the fact that you have a consumer-level experience, and that's working. So I think, for me, a clear indicator of that is adoption.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, if we can summarize, what business travelers are expecting is exactly the same user experience. So there's no reason why, if yesterday night I was booking my trip on whatever is your favorite leisure website, there's no reason why this morning I wouldn't have the same experience and the same multi-channel experience. There's no reason why I couldn't start my booking on my mobile and take the time to think about it, go back to it on my laptop, and then maybe use the chat functionality to have more details, and maybe, if it needs to be escalated, have the chance to speak with a travel consultant, because also service does matter, even though tech is also service. But so yes, that's what I wanted to add. And the fact that Egencia joined the GBT family a year ago, I think is a great opportunity also for the market, because we are just bringing together our technology with the best content, which is at the end of the day what business travelers and travel managers are expecting.
What does that mean? You brought up, the advantages of working with GBT. What does that mean in terms of sort of innovation and being agile? Does it hinder, or is it a benefit to be part of the biggest TMC?
Well, there's nothing but benefits when you bring together.
You can only say that, right? You have
Sorry?
to say that.
you said it. No, but first of all, I'm super happy to be next to TripActions on the stage today. When you bring together one of the best technology with the best of content and service, and also meeting and events, because I think we quickly talked about it in the previous session, but it's clearly something that has become even more important post-pandemic. So yes, there's nothing, but as long as it's driving value for clients and partners, it makes sense.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you, Chevawn, the role of travel management, right? A travel manager. We talked about digital nomads. We talked about sort of that distributed workforce. That really impacts how travel management has to kind of view their role as well. A travel manager has to view their role, because travel patterns are changing, and there's perhaps a different type of risk management that comes in. How do you think that role has changed or developed as we're coming out of this pandemic?
Yeah, I think there's maybe two parts to that. I would say potentially is almost greater scrutiny for the role. You need to have, you have to have that real-time data, you have to have accurate data, you have to be able to have those tough conversations with your executive team around your spend. So you need to have as much visibility and control over that as possible. So that's something that we've heard from our customers. It's something that we make sure they've got the tools to do. We, as the the TMC, our role is to support the travel manager in whatever they need, and that's going to be resources, it's going to be having accurate data, it's going to be real-time data, it's going to be the best possible reporting capability so that they can go in and have those conversations. There's greater scrutiny, especially as we move into more of a recessionary environment. I'll also add potentially that factor around duty of care and that kind of evolving a little bit to be to include traveler well-being, to look at much more than just where they are and what they're doing. It's also how how are we going to actually have those potentially those duty of care theories put in practice, and that's what happened during the pandemic. Those theories, those plans were stress tested when you had a group of people who were potentially stuck on the other side with COVID. Where did they stay? How did they manage getting back, etc. So I would say that there's a lot more scrutiny, there's a lot more stress testing. You have to have actual, they're no longer theories, they're actually, excuse me, real world practice now.
Okay. And Ronan, I'm actually going to quote something. This came out of a TTNL Travel Tech Nation Leaders session that we did, where a travel manager said that they have to their role has evolved to being more of a people manager. You agree?
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. I mean, most of the prospects, clients we are talking to, what we've seen recently post-pandemic is really a shift, a big shift in the role of the travel manager, which is a great opportunity for them for different reasons. First of all, we've seen more and more stakeholders involved in the decision-making process. We've seen new functions like Chief Data Officer, Chief Well-being Officer, Chief Happiness Officers. There's a lot of CXO that are now, which is great because it's also related to the expectations in terms of culture. So, sorry, just what I wanted to say is that there's a great opportunity for the travel manager to now operate as a Chief Journey Officer. That's the way we like to see it. At the same time, it's also another opportunity for travel managers to have more impact, to connect business travel with every business goals, every company's goals, whether we are talking about sustainability, happiness, sales, retention, innovation. There's now a clear correlation, and we believe that travel managers who manage to implement a strong travel culture will manage to unlock their company's culture and success.
So you're saying that the chief journey officer or the travel manager really has kind of a wider role to play going forward, right?
And it's also creating opportunities in terms of career path. We have one of our biggest history clients in France, where the travel manager was just promoted as the head of sustainability. So who would have expected that 2 years ago? Maybe not too many people. So yeah, at the end of the day, where there are challenges, there are also opportunities.
Okay. Let's shift gears a little bit. FinTech, we talk about technology, but I think especially in business travel, FinTech's kind of on everyone's minds. We have very different strategies in some sense, with Liquid and Egencia being more agnostic when it comes to, that integration of travel expense. Tell me from your viewpoints why, you think that's the right strategy, either way.
So I think around FinTech, if you look back in the last 5 years, there have been so many developments in that space. I don't think anyone in the room, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think anyone in the room pays for things or uses banks digitally in the way that they did 5 years ago. So that whole industry has had a lot of investment. That's why it's potentially buzzy, as you said. There's a lot of investment, a lot of development there from a technology point of view. And I think from a TripActions point of view, we've leveraged that. That's also, one of the reasons that I joined the company. I was always, in my previous roles, I was always the last person to submit my expense report. It was the most painful experience. I always had my, the finance managers pinging me, saying, please, can you do it? It was a painful experience. It was slow. And I worked, I'd worked in tech with, very tech-forward companies who you would assume would have solutions that were in step with what they were doing. So when it comes to Liquid, we've leveraged a lot of that consumer-like payment and expense solutions. What does that mean? That means smart cards. That means being able to have it digitally in your Apple Wallet or whatever that means, or physically. It means having a centralized card, but it also means having that built-in policy so that you're not spending out of policy and you're spending quite safely and consciously. It also means having that technology to avoid having that in really painful business expense management process. And then it also means having that end-to-end solution. So everything's speaking to one another. From a travel manager point of view, you have complete visibility of your travel spend. From a CFO point of view, you can see end-to-end everything that's happening. And then from the end consumer's point of view, you're not worried about spending out of pocket. You're not worried about spending out of policy and having to supplement that. It's part of the entire journey, that travel and whatever, all the expenses that come alongside that.
How do you influence behavior, though? Because I feel like expense management is always, despite the challenges, it has been a way to almost implement policy, right? Where you're putting those safeguards and saying, if I have a card and I can go, spend, and then the visibility is at the back end, what does that really mean? Or can you put those controls in place in the beginning?
I think that's the beauty of the technology, right? So you've got the ability to set that smart policy, and you're going to tap your card on an expense that is out of policy. All the back-end information is there to know you're on trip, but you're maybe buying dinner for 6 or 7 people. It's going to decline that. You've got that smart control from a manager point of view, and then as the end user, well, I'm about to buy dinner for 6 people, I should only be buying dinner for myself, and it'll prevent you from spending out of policy.
So you need to know that before, though.
You don't need to know your policies, but you have the, you're going to have clear visibility of your policies within the app, but you know that you don't have to sort of rethink everything through before you
and don't have to remember to fill that expense report.
Exactly, or take a photo of your receipt and then email it and then upload it and then, do the expense dance.
And Ronan, I know Egencia works with multiple.
I think you covered it pretty well. So maybe one thing that has become also our reality is that the reality of yesterday might not be the reality of tomorrow. COVID is still there. So I think what's important, as you mentioned during also your introduction, is flexibility. So as long as we can manage to provide our clients with more AI-driven solutions that can automatically adapt, whether the travel policy or the different rules in terms of geographies, then that will always make us relevant. It's all about being relevant at the right time. So I think that's the one comment that I wanted to...
There's more than one way to skin the cat, as they say. Okay. One other thing that I really want to bring up also is subscriptions, right? Because the TMC world has always been very much sort of a transaction-based business model. We've seen now some other large TMCs are sort of experimenting with subscriptions as well. The leisure side, it sort of seems to be taking off. What's your take on whether that's going to come to business travel?
That's a very good question. First of all, the pricing model is a key, from a sales perspective, is a key component of your value proposition. So if what you've sold so far during 2-3 months is nothing but simplicity, and then you come up with a grid fees with 200 lines, then you lose, at least you're taking the chance to lose the deal. So it has to be consistent, end to end. It's part of your value proposition. At Egencia, we decided to to give our clients the choice. One thing that is for sure is that prospects are now expecting more simplicity. So whether it's the price per trip is the answer, or maybe just a simplified transactional model is a good start. They want simplicity, they want pay-per-use. Because again, they don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months, so they want to make sure that they will pay for what they use. So that's what we've seen so far. When we look at the data and the main reasons why we win deals against all our competitors worldwide, interestingly, we managed to. The simplified transactional model is still the one that works the best. I'm not saying it's going to be the case in 6 months, 12 months, but for now, it's a win.
Is there a role, you think, for subscription-based models to coexist with the traditional transaction model?
Has it evolved?
Can there be two different models, and then clients choose what works for them?
Yeah, clients. Honestly, a lot of so fast-growing businesses, companies have a very strong tech DNA, and are most of them super familiar with having such a pricing model, which is, by the way, if you look at some of the biggest tech companies, you look at Workday, you look at LinkedIn, you look at Slack, the way they built their pricing structured, there is a subscription model. But yes, we've talked to travel managers that are expecting something different. But for now, again, they're just expecting the whole industry, because it's not just us, Egencia, or TripActions, or other places. They're expecting the whole industry to work together and to align on something that is simpler to use. For now, again, between the price per trip and the transactional model, it's not black or white. That's what I would say.
Still evolving, and do you agree?
Yeah, I think TripActions has always had that software as a service subscription model. I think you were referring to CWT coming out with that subscription-based. So yeah, I anticipate that others will try it. But yeah, it's an interesting observation.
Okay. One last question, sustainability. It's definitely on our minds, as I'm sure it is on yours and your clients. COP26 will bring some new reporting requirements and challenges. What role do the TMCs play in tackling this? How do you help your clients? Especially, I think the ones who perhaps don't have the corporate sort of structures that larger companies might have to support sustainability. What role would you play?
Yeah, I would say on sustainability, at least our position on it is to make sure that we give our customers the tools that they need to be able to track, measure, report, educate their travelers, make the right decisions at checkout. Is this the most carbon-conscious route? Are there other options available? So really putting the tools in their hands to make the best decisions. I think we've also invested, as I'm sure most TMCs have at this point, in partnerships and relationships that are sort of future-proofing around SAF, or biotech fuel, sustainable aviation fuel. So those are making sure that we're on the right side of that innovation and we're staying in step with that and having that offering for our customers. Beyond that, I would...
Kind of enabling them and helping them.
Enabling them, giving them the right tools in their toolbox to be able to make sure that they're checking the tick boxes when it comes to their sustainability journey.
Yeah. And Ronan?
Same feedback. There's clearly a growing interest. When you look at most of the RFPs where we have the chance to bid, clearly there's now a clear set of goals that are clearly identified by most travel managers and companies. So they're challenging us, which is the right thing to do, I think. And so our role is really to power progress for sustainable travel, like through, as you said, empowering travel managers with the right tools to set first of all, to set a baseline, because still many companies still have to set a baseline in order then to set targets for the upcoming years and to see how they can offset some of that carbon. And also, let's not forget the travelers. I think we need to also empower them with the right tools, the right content, to make sure that they will make a more eco-friendly choice when booking.
So empowering travel managers and travelers so that they're making the right choice. I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you very much, Chevawn, Ronan.